Hi, everyone. Welcome to Mindful Sex. I'm Andrea Bertoli, and I work with people all over the world to help them discover their version of the erotic within. My work blends the scientific and the spiritual to help you better understand your body, better understand your sex and pleasure and desire, and also bring in the energetic component with tantric and Taoist wisdom so that you can explore the sex beyond what you may have experienced before, what you might know, and what you even might think is possible in this moment. I'm going to drop in my social media to the chat just in case you want to leave early and you don't get it. I will also be sending emails to all of you. Social media is a great way to stay connected. It is also very G-rated. Sex educators and coaches like myself are pretty heavily censored. So if you find us on Instagram, just know that we can't say half the shit we want to say. So the classes and the Patreon are really the best way to find all the uncensored, shame-free pleasure education that you want and so deserve. This is a workshop. This is an intro level workshop. So please know that this is just scratching the surface of some of the work that I offer, the work that I teach, the practices that I explore with myself and with my beloved. If this interests you, please reach out so that we can talk more. Please also know that because this is a public workshop, this is not a substitute for therapy or coaching. We are happy to answer questions. And we can't do a full-on kind of deep dive into your relationship or into a specific challenge in a public forum like this. So if you have a really deep dive question or if you really want one-on-one support, please reach out directly and either Christopher or myself might be fit to help you out. So the other really important thing to know about this work is that this work is very healing. It's not just how to have better sex, how to choose the best toy, the best way to give a blowjob. That's important, and that's absolutely stuff that I can teach you. But this is really about the healing process of sex, tuning in to your sexuality, tuning into your desires, finding out what's possible in your own body, in your own desire, and in your relationship. That is really kind of this next level sexual exploration that we're going to talk about today and that I offer as part of my work. Um, I do private events. I do online pleasure education via Patreon. I have all the socials. I do one-on-one and group events. Just last weekend, I taught at a all-women sex party in San Francisco, and I'll be on a conference in a couple of months, and I'm on podcasts and all sorts of fun stuff like that. So lots of different ways to engage with my work. I want you to leave today's class really having a sense of your own power as a lover, as a sexual person, and not only just the power kind of within yourself, but also know that you have so much power over other people, their sexual expression, their nervous system. And we'll talk about today how to create a really good sexual dynamic with another person, but it all starts with yourself. A little bit of disclosure, I identify as a bisexual, kinky, polyamorous tantrika. I'm cisgendered, born and raised female, and I welcome all of you, no matter how you identify, no matter your sexual orientation, relational orientation, all of you is welcome here. That being said, no hateful comments, no disparaging comments will be tolerated at all in our chat. So I want to give the microphone over to my beloved Christopher. Please say hi and let the people know who you are.
Hi, y'all. I'm Christopher Brown. My day job, I'm a certified sex therapist. I've been a psychotherapist for over 20 years, so that's talk therapy. I often get asked the difference between what Andrea does in coaching and the difference in what I do in therapy. So therapy, think of it like physical therapy. I usually go when something's hurting or not working right, and then I leave once I've achieved the level of functioning that I expect my body to have at whatever age I am, right? So that's kind of what sex therapy gets me, right? I'll get crises in relationships too, so it's not just what's happening in an individual, but I'll get a crisis in a relationship. Once we're over the crisis, hey, I don't need therapy anymore, right? I graduate. That's pretty true, actually. And most of the folks that I know, when it comes to their sex lives and their aspiration for their sex lives beyond conception, right? So beyond having sex to procreate and have children, most of the people I want just don't want adequate functioning out of their sex life for pleasure, right? I mean, how sexy does that sound? Hi, come in for a workshop on Saturday on how to achieve adequate sexual functioning. Ugh, no thanks. I'm not getting up for that. But I will get up for this woman who will take you from adequate sexual functioning to ecstatic expressions of pleasure in your body and with your partner. And with that, I hand it over to the woman who can take us there. Andrea, thank you for the work you do.
I appreciate you getting up for me, Christopher, so very much. And now I would love to hear from you. Just take a moment and drop into the chat where you are in the world. This is so fun for me to see. You don't have to add any other identifying information, but it's so fun for me to see where you are. We have Barbara from New York. Thank you for being here. And Melanie, aloha to my friend on Maui. Seattle, awesome. Maryland. California, fabulous. Sacramento, LA. Okay, we got a lot of West Coast folks. Appreciate that. Great. Thank you. So far we've covered across the US and Mexico. Fabulous. I love this. So we have most of North America covered. Appreciate it. My time zone's not super compatible with Europe or India or Australia. So yeah, it makes sense that we're mostly here. All right, we got San Francisco, Oahu, aloha. Thank you for being here. Okay. Thank you everyone for dropping that in. It's always so fun to see where everybody is. Okay. So let's get started. So as I mentioned, master might not be the best word for you. You might have big feelings about it. That is okay. Your feelings are welcome. Language is always up to our own discretion, our own history, our own vibrancy, whatever we resonate with. Again, you may prefer sexual intelligence, sexual integration, erotic wisdom, erotic practice, something like that. But basically, what I want you to feel is sexually empowered in all sorts of different ways. Again, you may like BDSM terms like dominant or top or daddy. You may like directive, receptive. Those are what we use a lot. And a lot of the conversation that we'll have today may seem gendered. Some of the experiences that I've had, the kind of case studies and kind of amalgamations I'll share about some client work and that Christopher may share, whatever kind of notions you have about like all men are like this or all women are like this, just know that a lot of those are misconceptions, right? The patriarchy harms us all, literally from top to bottom. And the more I do this work, the more I realize that this idea that like all men are like this and all women are like this totally goes out the window when we start to work one-on-one with individuals who have their own experience. So for all of the heterosexual couples I have where the woman doesn't want to have sex and the husband wants to have sex all the time and is pushing her, I have just as many couples where it's the opposite, where the woman wants to have more sex and the husband is not interested or not available. So as you hear me speak today, and Christopher as well, just know that while we are speaking from our experience as a heterosexual couple, not all of this is gendered. And I would say very, very little of this is gendered. And yet often in BDSM terms, like dominant or top, there is this kind of gendered connotation. So just keep that in mind, that if you're in a queer partnership, if you're in a non-monogamous partnership, you may move in between these different roles in a particular scene, in a particular relationship, in a particular lifetime. So who we are as sexual beings is fluid, and within each individual relationship or scene, it can all be really fluid. So I want to start by talking about like what sexual mastery is not. So it is not expecting your partner to meet all of your sexual needs. This is something I hear a lot from couples that work with me. My partner doesn't want to have sex, so therefore I don't get to have sex ever. I don't get to have sexual expression. There's a lot of nuance to that. And when we talk about being a sexual master, it actually starts within, right? So we don't want to expect one person to meet all of our sexual needs. Number two would be any sort of coercion or begging or pushing your partner into some sort of sexual experience. Like that does not make for a sexual master. And this might not be super direct. I know I've had partners who have been very directly coercive, and I've had partners who are very subtly coercive. And maybe they get a little pouty or a little grumpy if I don't give in or if I don't have sex as often as they want. I've heard this from lots of people. And so there's the direct kind of coercion or the direct punishment, but then there's this kind of real subtle or more coercive punishment where I'm just going to get grumpy and not talk to you for a few days if you don't give in to my needs. And then there's the more direct punishment, whether it's emotional, financial, relational, if your partner, if you don't, if you treat your partner badly for not doing what they want you to do. Um, Another way that I see this show up is when people are misleading or unclear about their intentions. And one of the things I've heard commonly is that, I just want more touch from my partner. I just want more connection. I want more intimate touch. And my partner will agree to do the intimate touch, the massage, whatever it might be. But then it always turns into sex. And the way that I've experienced this, one of the ways I've experienced this is that my partner would say, my ex-partner, terrible human, would say, tonight is all about you and I'm going to go down on you and I'm going to pleasure you and it's all for your pleasure. And then 20, 30 minutes in, it would be like, well, actually, I want to do this and this and this, right? So it was like this misleading kind of like there was the incorrect intention. So if there's misleading, if there's coercion, if there's punishment, it eliminates our ability to consent. It eliminates our ability to trust our partner. And trust is really the foundation of a clear, boundaried sexual partnership. So there's four main points I want to share about what I think being in your sexual mastery is. So one is, like I said earlier, like you are a steward of your own sexual desire. The way I phrase it, that's a little bit more poetic, is that you are your own best lover always, right? If you are feeling super turned on and your partner is not available, whether they're busy at work or they're out of town or they're not feeling well or they just simply don't want to, it is your responsibility to work with your own erotic energy and either channel it into something creative. Maybe you make a nice dinner, maybe you create some art, or maybe you sublimate it and you go for a run, or you journal about it to kind of move it through, or you sit down and have a beautiful masturbation session and feel your own body and feel your pleasure without making anybody else responsible. So this is especially important if your person's erotic desires differ from yours, right? Whether it's a time difference, my partner always wants sex in the morning, I always want sex at night. How do we find this to work? Whether they want to go slower and you want to go faster, and maybe they're in a different emotional space. Maybe they need something a little bit faster, a little bit more, aggressive and sexually kind of powerful, and maybe you want something a little softer and slower because you're feeling a little tender. So being a steward of what you want and coming to a sexual experience in that wholeness while also holding space for your partner to have their own experience. This is, I think, one of the primary definitions of mastery. So you are your own best lover. You are in charge of your desire, arousal, and your orgasm. It is lovely if we develop conscious, communicative partnerships where our partner wants to be in service of our sexual selves, right? And you are also not obligated, right? So there's this really interesting line between I don't owe this person anything. And I'll just use Christopher since he's my partner right now, and it just makes it more clear. I don't owe him sex. I don't owe him in this way, but I love him and I want to be in service of his sexual self, his erotic energy. One of my favorite sex educators described it as being in service of your partner's eros, being in service of their eroticism. This doesn't mean that I have sex when I don't want to. It doesn't mean that I do things I don't want to, but I generally want to be in a place where I am open and receptive to his sexual needs. And likewise, he is receptive and open to my sexual needs, right? So there's a difference between like requirement versus in service of. And I know that a lot of people have partnerships where that that dynamic is missing, right? Where one person feels like, oh, I owe this person sex. Or I've heard plenty of people say, like, I just have to do it because it's like an item on the to-do list for today. Or we haven't had sex in a few weeks. So oh, it's about time, like we should do it, right? That is not being in service of their eros. And so I invite you, if you have experienced a situation like that, or if you're in one now, to really think about how can you work on your own erotic self, your own sensual pleasure through your own pleasure practices, through erotic stimulation, audio, visual, written, to really turn yourself on and really show up for yourself sexually so that you can, in theory, hopefully, be more available to your partner sexually. Um, I'm going to pause there. Christopher, I want to see if you have anything you want to add to that. You always add such good insight.
Oh, thank you. So I just want to echo everything you're saying. So to back up, I mean, what Andrea is saying about trust, to back way up to say, okay, trust is the foundation. There are two foundational pillars, and this isn't Christopher's opinion, this isn't Andrea's opinion. Research of couples with long-term couple and sexual satisfaction show that the two pillars are commitment and trust. So how do we apply this to being masterful lovers? Right? Andrea's got it, right? First of all, I have to trust, right? I can't, if you're going to abuse me, or if I'm going to abuse you, if I'm going to be coercive, if I'm going to be passive aggressive, you won't be able to trust me, right? So it's eroding that pillar. Then the commitment is the second thing I hear when she's talking about, hey, I'm going to choose open-heartedly to be in service of my partner's eros, right? So that's a commitment. Said a different way, one of our favorite sex researchers and educators, Emily Nagoski, will say, great sex in her research shows, are these couples good friends who share a mutual commitment to sex in their lives and that it's important? Okay, so that's what Andrea's talking about here, right? There's that trust. Here's the things we don't do. Here are the things that erode trust. But then here's the commitment we're going to make. We're going to prioritize sex. And again, that doesn't mean everybody has to, right? But if you're in this class about how to be a masterful lover, I suspect you may really want a situation where you're prioritizing sex and sexual connection.
Thank you. Yes to prioritization. And this is something that, you know, when I teach people, one of the things that I hear from some folks is that, oh my God, this sounds like a lot of work. And it's work only if you turn it into a checklist item. If you start to think about sex as something that your body deserves, if pleasure is something that your body is literally wired for from top to bottom, if you start to imagine that bliss is your birthright, that bliss is your natural state of being, and everything that we do in service of the erotic or in service of eros is really bringing you back to wholeness. It's not because my partner wants to have an orgasm and therefore I need to act a certain way to or do a certain thing. It's that this is how my body is meant to feel. This is the experience I want to have with my beautiful body in this one precious lifetime. This is a huge priority for us, right? He runs marathons. I do yoga and I started weightlifting. like we have other things that we do, but this is our priority. This is our shared priority in the relationship. So we purposefully make time for it. We set aside time on the calendar. We set aside time during the day. Lately, he's been sending me up to our roof deck when it's sunny to go masturbate to make sure that I am in service of my own sexual energy. So I have been making love with myself and with the mountains and with the sky and with the goddess because this is my birthright. Yeah, there's a million other things I want to be doing, and I should probably vacuum the floor and I should probably go downstairs and make the bed. But if I spend 20 minutes or 30 minutes in pleasure with my boobs out in the sun, like I'm going to be a better person and I'm probably going to be a better lover in those days that I get to do that. It stormed here last night, so I'm probably not going to go up there and do it today. So we'll probably do it downstairs today. Okay. Um, so me being in service of my sexual energy allows me to feel more sexual energy and allows me to show up differently in my relationship, but also in my business, with my friendships, in my daily life, how I show up to my own body and my workouts and things like that. Um, your sexual energy does not diminish. The more we practice it, the more we tune into it, the more expansive it becomes. Like you literally cannot run out of sexual energy. There's a slight caveat to that is if you have a penis and if you ejaculate, you will experience that refractory period. But if you keep hanging out with us, you will also learn how to have non-ejaculatory orgasms and learn how to have energetic orgasms so that you don't get depleted. So if you have questions about that and you want your partner or yourself to learn more about orgasm techniques that don't deplete you, please let us know. Okay, number 2, a masterful lover is present. And presence is, I would define it as somebody who is calm, somebody who is steady, somebody who is aware and attuned. So when we are embodied, we are in our own self, right? We're feeling ourself, feeling our energy, feeling our kind of self presence. When we're attuned to the other person, right? So this means that I can hold my sexual energy. So if I'm really ramped up and I really just like super want to get off and I'm super horny and I super want to kind of get into it, Christopher might be in the middle of a work project and I can't approach him all hot and bothered and like, let's go. I'm going to need to be present with him and attuned to him and say like, okay, like what does my babe need to warm up, to calm down, to shift from work mode to play mode and vice versa. He knows that. So for example, we did an erotic massage class a couple of weeks ago where my pussy was the pussy on display. So he was giving me an erotic massage in front of other people. And I had been in teacher mode, in facilitation mode, leading this class. And then the goal was for me to drop into my body, drop into my pleasure. And he knew that I would need grounding, breath, presence, and connection, that I would need to feel connected with him in order to feel connected to my own body, right? So there's that kind of multiple aspects of attunement and embodiment. So it's when he knows when my head is a little bit spinny or when I'm a little bit distracted to start with the breath, to focus on breathing together, to breathe into our bellies together, for his nervous system to calm my nervous system. It's when he and I are having a really deep experience, like we did a couple of weeks ago, when we're deep into fucking and I start crying because I'm having some sort of big emotional release. The more we do this work of conscious sexuality, the more emotions begin to flow. And even though I was crying, and even though I became quite activated, quite hysterical in my crying, he said, keep going, like, I'm with you, I'm here for it, like, keep going, like, keep fucking, right? So kind of those holding those dual aspects of me being super emotional while also still being in his body, in his arousal, and still kind of holding all of me in that moment. Like that is mastery. Yes.
A quick comment on that scene that she just described. So, to back up a step for our kink folks out there and our vanilla plus folks, it's good to have a safe word, right? So, if you have a safe word, that means everything stops immediately. We use the traffic signal. So, we will actually use green, yellow, orange, red. So as she's crying and she's having this big emotional experience, part of what we've been working on is she not stop herself, that she keep going, right? Whether that's in emotional expression or sexual expression or squirting expression or any kind of expression, right? So that's something that we have talked about that we're working on. And she didn't say red. Right. So, if you've got a partner who's like visibly distressed and you haven't had these conversations and you don't have a safe word structure, I might say, hey, kind of slow down, maybe pause. Don't necessarily stop unless, y'all really haven't had much communication. You think a full stop is warranted, and just do a quick check-in. You okay? You want to keep going? Right. So she's describing a pretty sophisticated scene that we've been working on, but we've also been talking a lot about it in non-sexual scenarios. So I just want to put that in there and a plug for a safe word structure. And again, it doesn't have to be super complicated. It can be the traffic light. It can be red light. It can be it. So just wanted to put that in, Andrea. Thanks. Back to you.
Thank you. So just for reference, Chris, maybe you could drop that into the chat. Red, green, yellow, just like a traffic light. Most of us, especially those of us in the US, understand that kind of intrinsically. And we also added orange because what we found was that I needed a little bit of space between like, hey, like let's slow down a little bit, to red. Like I needed a little bit of like, hey, this is too much. I need to pause, but I don't really need to stop. So for us, adding in an extra color made sense. Okay, so here's some other things to consider when we think about presence. How are you showing up in your own nervous system for your partner? Are you distracted? Are you making a grocery list? Are you thinking about that email that you didn't send or meant to send at work? Are you in the moment? And look, our brains are meant to be distracted. Like this is the idea of like, oh, we need to sit down. I can't meditate because my brain will never stop. Like that is the point. Your brain is never going to stop. But we learn tools and practices to say, oh, I'm having an intrusive thought about that email. I need to either take a break and go do that, or I just need to acknowledge that's there, boop, come back. Or, oh my gosh, I got to remember to do this thing later. Okay, great. Help me remember it. Great, come back. Right? We keep coming back to the present moment. This is the essence of mindfulness. This is the essence of meditation. And I think this is really the essence of sex, right? When we show up, how might you drop into presence? It might be eye gazing with each other. It might be synchronizing your breathing. For Christopher and I, we really enjoy an asynchronous breath, right? So he's exhaling, I'm inhaling. So we kind of get this like pendulum swing, super hot, love it. Um, Deeply grounds me in my body. The other thing to really know, and this is something that I'm seeing more and more people talk about, which is awesome, but they often don't talk about it in terms of sex, is that our nervous systems are really the foundation of good sex. When we are in our daily life, we are in traffic, we are stressed at work, we are running around from soccer practice to the gym to the post office. We are in an activated state. We are in our sympathetic nervous system, our fight or flight, right? Fight or flight is an evolutionary brilliant system that allows us to literally run from lions so that it floods our body with adrenaline and cortisol, puts all that blood into our limbs and gets us moving and going and getting shit done. That's great. We need that to get shit done. Most of us are not being chased by lions anymore. But what we don't also give ourselves space for is the time to shift into rest and digest. Another teacher I like calls it stay and play, right? So once you are done with your day, once you are done with the shuttling and the prepping and the food prep and things like that, you need practices, rituals, tools, herbs to sink into stay and play. When we are in fight or flight, we are not going to have good sexual experiences. We may have orgasms, we may have a little bit of fun, but they're not going to be from this like deep pleasure space, right? When we are in rest and digest, we're more able to connect, we're more able to feel trust, we're more able to listen and be empathetic to people. And when we are in rest and digest, we have access to all of our pleasure centers. We can drop in using breath. You can drop in by doing some yoga moves or going for a short run or even just doing some stretching. Taking your body out of fight or flight and into rest and digest is going to be one of the most important things you can do for yourself and for your lover or lovers, however you show up. Because if I show up frantic, nervous, distracted, hungry, I'm not going to be a great, I'm not going to be a great play partner. I'm going to be distracted. I'm going to still be in my brain. My nervous system is going to be a little frazzled, right? If I can take the time to really settle, breathe, be calm, find my pleasure, then I'm going to be more present. I'm going to be more loving. I'm going to be more open and receptive to pleasure. So, nervous systems are so important. And it takes time, right? Like we are not light switches. This is another thing I hear a lot from people where they say, I should just want sex more. Where did my libido go? I used to want sex all the time. I don't want sex anymore. And I will ask them, okay, well, what does your day look like? And if you are trying to cram in 15 minutes of sex as a checklist item on a Tuesday at the end of the day, it's probably not going to be delicious sex that's going to make you want more, right? And so for a lot of people, having less sex like that might actually be better because if you set aside time, if you drop in, let your nervous systems kind of settle and also kind of connect with each other, right? We can co-regulate, then we're going to have a really deep, pleasurable experience. Um, Christopher, the other note I have in here is about this new phrase that we learned around containment. And I would love for you to talk about that around kind of containment of someone's nervous system. I'd love to hear you share that.
I'm laughing because Andrea and I were talking about this phrase. So I said, hey, it's really about contain, don't restrain. And then we kind of giggled and say, well, unless that's really what you're into. And so there are circumstances where in the kink world where containment will actually set some people free, right? And that plays right into what Andrea was talking about with the nervous system. There are some people who, when constrained, whether it's in a beautiful shibari tie or in cuffs, like a custom set or something that you can find online in pretty reputable places. That inability to get up and jump and tend to the laundry is actually setting me free in a way. It's like, oh, I literally can't move. Okay, so all I can do is sink into this moment. So, with that big asterisk that there is an exception to, contain, don't restrain. What I'm talking about in containment, what Andrea is talking about is this twofold. One, and she talked about this really eloquently. First of all, and foremost for masterful lovers, contain your own desire. Do not obligate a partner under the tyranny of your desire or your arousal. Contain it, hold it. That doesn't mean restrain it, cut it off. That doesn't mean distract from it. The old stereotypic male premature ejaculation methods were really distractions, right? We're really, let me try to restrain this. No, I want to contain it and go deeper, right? That's a big difference. And so when we're talking about partnered sex, we really want to be attuned. That's, Andrea talked about that too. Be attuned and hold and contain them. You remember the scene she's saying? She's weeping. She's really finding something big inside. We're fucking. She's going, and I'm going, keep fucking, keep going. And the phrase that comes with it is, I got you. I got you, right? Especially if your partner, and who in this world that is rewarded through individualism, particularly in the West, isn't taught to be some version of a boss, right? And some version of a kick-ass individual who can do it all themselves, right? This is the antidote to that, y'all, is being a partner who can contain so they can let go and deepen. Right. So it's not hold back. Don't, and Andrew, you can speak to this if you choose, right? The solution, isn't, in the male premature ejaculation thing. When you think about baseball scores or something like that, some really horrible imagery, so I don't come, or I really turn myself off. That's restraining, right? And a lot of female partners, male partners too, will say, "Oh, I'm too much. I better hold back," right? The legendary sex educator Betty Dodson, who taught women some masturbation with a big Hitachi magic wand, right? One of the big things that Betty got to as she's coaching masturbation is don't take the wand off your clit. You can take it. You can take it. Your body was built for this. But we're not taught that our bodies are built for that. You can contain it. You can hold it. That's containment, not restraint. Restraint is taking that, magic wand off. It's too much. No, 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 it's not. And if you've got a coach or a partner who can sit there and say, I got you, I got you, and be big and be able to hold it, right? And have been many times in my relationship with Andrea where I see something in her and realize, oh, I have to be bigger so that she can be all of her, right? Because that's the commitment I'm making and I have made and I make over and over. So, end of my TED talk. Andrea, I'll hand it back to you. But if you want any more detail on that, just let me know.
That's perfect. Thank you. Um, One of the things that Christopher touched on, and I alluded to it in the beginning, was this idea that, like, as a male lover, you should just last longer. But when we are distracting ourselves from our arousal, you are not actually attuned, right? You're in your own head, probably. You're not really in your body. And so the practices that I offer to folks with penises is not to stay in your head. It's actually to learn to feel more. So just like he was talking about, Betty Dodson would teach women to just hold this. If you're not familiar with the Hitachi magic wand, it's like the OG massager, and the head is about the size of a baseball. So it's a very rumbly, very intense sensation. And to really move through that and learn to train your nervous system to expand and hold that much pleasure. So sometimes when I talk about this work, if people haven't talked with me or listened to other kind of conscious sexuality people, like I had someone in an event last night when I was talking about extended orgasmic state, she said, "That's not possible. Like, I don't believe you." And I said, "I totally get that you don't believe me. I didn't believe it either." Because if we don't have a felt sense of it, and if we don't have a visual to go along with it, it might seem like totally impossible, totally made up. And it's when we train ourselves, whether you have a clitoris or a penis, you train yourself to hold more pleasure. And the metaphor I use is that if you are masturbating secretly, quietly, shamefully in the closet, which most people have learned to masturbate in that way, that's your sprinting. You are training for sprinting. When you go into the bedroom with another person, or if you want to experience these expanded pleasure states in your own body with yourself and self pleasure, that is the marathon. You have to train for a marathon. You cannot just go from, and you have to train for sprinting too, but you can't just go from being a sprinter and doing this in 5 minutes in silence to then having a 10-minute orgasm. You can't do that. Christopher is a marathon runner, and I watch him and his dedication to training and starting with 5 miles and 8 miles and 10 miles and like 16 miles. And then finally running a whole marathon. Like, I'm not a runner, obviously. He's the runner in this family. And like that amount of dedication that he puts into his running, like, if you're called, like, that is the dedication you get to put into your sexual practices. And I promise you, the end result, go back to that in a second, is fucking phenomenal. Like, we have unlocked orgasmic potential in our own bodies that neither of us could have imagined 2 years ago. So all that to say, there is a lot possible no matter what body type you have. And this leads into my third point, which is a masterful lover has skills. So again, if you read Cosmo magazine headlines at the grocery store or at the drugstore, or if you read, BuzzFeed articles like 10 ways to eat pussy or like 10 best ways to give a blowjob, like sure, those are helpful. But if you are just going through the motions, like that's not enough, right? So yes, you need the skills to be a masterful lover. That's erotic massage, it's learning anatomy and physiology. Like, do you know what the clitoral complex looks like? If you are a woman or if you have sex with women or people with vaginas, you need to know what the clitoral complex looks like because it is the secret to deeper pleasure. Do you need to know how to stroke a cock in a different way than just going in and doing a really fast hand job to, again, kind of perpetuate that like sprinting, right? How do we learn to explore a soft cock and explore all of the tissues in there? How do we help our lovers with penises feel pleasure in their whole body, in their testicles, in their perineum, in their buttholes? How do we start to explore new portals to pleasure? That takes skills building. So just like we stay with the running metaphor, like we learn to sprint usually by ourselves in the dark silently, and then we try and take ourselves to a marathon into the bedroom. You can practice kind of lasting longer, trying these things. And also along the way, you need a coach to help you say, like, here's how your gait needs to be adjusted. Here's how your pacing could be fixed so that you could have more stamina, right? Coaches along the way can help you with some of these skills building and some of these tools so that you better understand your own anatomy, physiology, desire, arousal, and so that you also understand whoever you're sleeping with. The other big thing about this is, and this is maybe one of the number one things I teach my students and clients, is really think about sex as non-goal oriented, right? There is so much pleasure to be had on the way to orgasm that, like, if an orgasm happens, great, but it is not the end all be all. We have been taught that orgasm is the best thing. All we want to do is come. It's great. Orgasms are great. Like, don't get me wrong. But what about those moments before your orgasm? How do you draw those out? How do you learn to have energetic and whole body experiences? How do you train yourself to have nipple orgasms or anal orgasms? Or, I can basically make Christopher come by by tickling and nibbling on his ears, right? That didn't happen 2 years ago. Like, we have built up to that. But understanding that there is so much more to sex than the orgasm, which Christopher, I'll have you talk about the way that other teacher talked about it to really give you a little bit of a sense of what the difference is.
I'm dying to jump in. Okay, so a couple of things. One, orgasm is simply the buildup and release of tension. That's it. Now, we're taught through the poor sex education we get, usually through sexual imagery and pornography, that orgasm is that big explosion and climax. It is that. That is an orgasm, but it isn't the orgasm. It isn't the only orgasm, right? So if you leave nothing out of today from the skills portion that Andrea is talking about, leave with that. And this one, we're all made up of the same parts, just arranged differently. So one of the big sex differences, legit sex differences, not socially conditioned sex, gender differences, which, okay, that's a whole nother talk. But one of the legit sex differences is the erectile tissue in female bodies is internal. And it takes about 35 to 47 minutes to become fully aroused and engorged. For men, it takes, barring erectile dysfunction issues, it takes much, 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 much less time. Right. So that is one of the sex differences. So I'll get, cis het couples that come into my practice and go, and she'll go, oh, I just take too long. And I said, well, how long does it take you to come? And she said, again, by the only coming she knows is that big climax. Right. And she says, oh, it takes me, 37 minutes. And I'm like, congratulations, you're normal. And then at the end of the day, what we all want to know about sex is like, we're all normal. And by the way, we are. Right. And she goes, what? What? Yeah. I mean, so if you start to understand how your anatomy works, just like Andrea is saying, we all have erectile tissue. Female sex organs are internal. That erectile, tissue is internal. It takes over a half an hour to fully engorge and get aroused. right? Okay. By the way, the other sex difference is after that big climax orgasm, Andrea hit it, but to say it again, men need a refractory period. People with penises need a refractory period. Women do not. You can take it. You are expansive. You can hold more than you ever dreamed. End of my second TED Talk. Back, Andrea, back to you.
You can hold more than you imagine. That's true. Okay. The fourth tip, and this is the last one, and then we'll open it up to Q&A right at the top of the hour, is being a masterful lover embraces all aspects of the erotic within, right? In our cultural in our culture and in our language and kind of in society, we think of the erotic as only sexual. But this harkens back to what I was saying in the beginning. Like the erotic is your energy, it is your state of being. We have a million things that squish us, and whether it's like self-imposed suppression, like, oh, I can't be like that, or externally imposed, women never do that, or a good wife doesn't do that. We have these ways of suppressing and having our stuff repressed that that squish this natural, beautiful, expansive energy. So understanding that sex is not, again, just like get in, do ABC, and like, have an orgasm and be done, but it's actually this emotional experience. It's actually a way to play with our edges of what is possible in our bodies and what is possible in our desires. It's also embracing sensation. So one of the things I invite some of my clients into is like a sensation play practice, right? How do you explore different ways of touch that might not kind of fall into the regular practice of what your sex looks like, but how do we start to explore, like, what might it feel like to use an ice cube on my neck, or use a hairbrush on my arm to get a little bit of that scratch. If you want to go buy new toys, you could explore floggers, which are like gentle, usually leather, kind of soft impact. You could do hard impact stuff like paddles or kitchen implements. So there's a whole range of sensation that's missing. And then also there's an aspect of the spiritual to sex. And this is something that not everyone is on board with, whether you've been raised in purity culture or it just seems too out there for you, like totally fine. But for us, and for a lot of the stuff that I teach, like there really is this aspect of spirituality, this aspect of divine connection that can emerge when we start to explore these edges. And the ways that you can engage with this energetic, with the spiritual, with the sensational include being in the flow of pleasure, right? Sometimes we set timers. So we say, okay, we have an hour or we have 2 hours, or like we're going to start at 4 and we're going to play until we're tired. But we set aside time so that we can be in the flow. And for me, that means like I need to make sure I've eaten a good meal or that I've prepped a good meal so that I know like dinner is waiting and I don't have to think about it. It might mean for you making sure, the kids are at grandma's house and they're away for the weekend so that you can fully relax into your space. It might mean checking off that final to-do list at work, right? So that you can set yourself free to play. It's also about being with that energy. And this is some of the work that we teach in our tantric classes. And I'll be teaching this free class next month is about solo tantric practice. So it'll be a little bit more about that, the breath, the eye gazing, the touch practices that you can get into to start to tap into and channel some of that erotic energy. And it's also about, again, pushing those edges, right? Maybe those edges are just in your fantasy. Maybe you just start by exploring what feels interesting to you. Maybe you talk about it with your partner. Maybe you read or write some erotica about, for example, the harem fantasy that you've had since you were 14. How do you start to explore those things as possibilities? Maybe just in your fantasies, and maybe it's something that you decide to make real in your life. So, in order to turn sex into this multi-dimensional experience, which I think it really can be, I want to drop us into just like a 5-minute practice. So, if you're driving, please don't do this. I'm going to have you close your eyes and focus on breath. If you are in a safe place and it's calm and you don't have interruptions, I want you to drop in. And we're going to do this just for 5 minutes. So it's 58. So we'll go until 3 minutes after. And I just want you to close your eyes and just notice your breath. Is it fast? Is it slow? Is it smooth? Is it ragged? Ah, just notice where your breath is in this moment. I've been talking, Christopher's been talking, you've been listening and hopefully absorbing a lot of cool information. So it might take a few more minutes to drop into your breath, and that is okay. We are just practicing. And if you're able to, and if it feels comfortable, I invite you to put one hand on your heart, one hand on your low belly, so just below your belly button. Try and really breathe into that low belly space. Try and take your inhale a little bit deeper. This is especially important in our low belly because we're taught that we're not supposed to be soft here. We're taught that it's supposed to be super tight and we're all supposed to have six-pack abs. And that's just not how human bodies are. Um, so let yourself be soft. Try and relax this part of your body. Take a few breaths, and then I want you to relax it again. Because again, we often hold so much tension that we think we're relaxed, but we're not. And so imagine that you're breathing into your lower hand, just a gentle in and out. No need to change the pace right now. And I invite you to feel your bum in the chair, on the bed, on the couch, on the floor, wherever you're at. And just notice what you feel. Could you adjust? Could you reposition? How can you make yourself like 5% more comfortable? Just in this moment, just breathing. And then I want you to do a quick body scan. So we're going to start at your toes and just feel your toes as they exist in the world. Maybe they are a little bit tight. Maybe they need to be twisted or bent a little bit to get a little bit of fresh blood flow. Just feel your toes. See if you can imagine bringing the breath all the way down there. And then feel your calves, your lower legs. See if you can breathe and bring the energy, bring the breath into your calves. And then do the same with your thighs, your quads, and your hamstrings. And bring the energy into your genitals. Just notice. Do you feel comfortable? Does it feel warm? Do they feel tingly? Do you need to adjust in any way to give your genitals a little bit more space? And then imagine breathing your breath all the way down to your genitals and just dropping your hips a little bit. See if you can add just a tiny, tiny rock of your pelvis just to start to create a little bit of movement. This is where we create and hold and expand our sexual energy. So, breathing into your pelvic floor, breathing into your genitals, giving them just a little bit of attention can be really a powerful meditation. Often we go about our day not touching them or touching them only in like a, I'm going to wash or I'm going to pee or I'm going to wipe or something, but really just embracing this beautiful part of our body that offers us so much potential. And then I want you to take two more breaths, really big inhale into your pelvic bowl and hold it. And just hold the energy there. See if you can feel pulsing. See if you can feel expansion. And then exhale it out. One more big inhale into your genitals, into your pelvic bowl. And hold. And let it out. You're all on mute, so if it feels good, make a big sound. Kind of move some of that energy that you created and felt in your genitals. And then just keep your eyes closed and just notice what you feel. Do you feel any tingling? Do you feel any sensation? Do you feel any tension? Do you feel any arousal? Do you feel curious? What is happening in your body in this moment? And just notice. And just know that you can drop into this type of experience anytime. To drop your breath into your body, to focus your energy on your genitals, on your sexual core, to be in your body in a different way. This is always available to you in any moment. You can do this as a practice before self-pleasure so that you help down-regulate your own nervous system. This is also a practice you can do with a partner, whether you're breathing together or eye gazing and breathing slowly and dropping in. This is the self-regulation. This is the co-regulation that our breath and our attention can offer us. So I invite you to stay in that place today as long as you can and just feel more of your sexual self, of your physical body, and of the potential energy and pleasure that awaits. With that, I'm going to wrap up the lecture portion of it. I want to open it up to questions. I've extended the time of this class, so now we'll go until the half an hour, so 10:30 for us. So we have time for Q&A. If you want to share your thoughts, please do. Again, I'm going to stop the recording in a moment, but while I still have you, thank you for being here. Thank you for being curious. Thank you for being explorers on this path. I love guiding people into deeper pleasure and into deeper expression. Please watch your inbox. You will get a collection of emails from me so that you can continue your pleasure exploration with resources, practices, and additional learnings. Thank you all so much for being here.